Alrighty, everyone, welcome to the United Independent Compensatory Code System, a compensatory counter-racist code, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and/or action for victims of racism, white supremacy by Neely Fuller Jr. Book study. We're covering area 2, entertainment. And before we give our little beginning thoughts on this, I must read this really potent and important part to get us started. And this from 119 from the 2016 revised edition. And the code says, many non-white people waste too much time, energy, and money by promoting and are participating in frivolous parties and social gatherings. Most so-called social gatherings of non-white people are none other than excuses to show off or gossip and or engage in nitpicking or malicious plotting. Such contacts usually serve to do little more than promote animosity, conflict, show-offism, dishonesty, gossip, and other forms of unnecessary and destructive activity. Um, I want to read that because it's a good introduction to um, what we're going to be talking about briefly, which is how we spend, well, how non-white people and white people spend their time engaging in so-called entertainment. And this entire portion right here really gave me a lot of clarity because I've been one to always hate parties and a lot of social gatherings because I didn't see the point. I never I always had to be dragged to parties or convinced to go to parties. And this portion of the code book is like wow, it was like gave me so much understanding to like what is happening on planet Earth, especially um involving black people, how they spend their time. Because when I was in college, all we really did was so-called turn up. You know, we would have a lot of gatherings. We would just go to each other's houses and just smoke all day and just have a so-called smoke sessions, which is really unconstructive, but that's what we did for our entertainment and for our economics as well. About a lot of showing off. But yeah, let's get us started into our little brief thoughts on this area. Anyone wants to go? I'll just I pretty much just did mine, so I'll let you guys take over.
I can go. Um, I really liked this section. I'm actually really excited to talk about it. I really, I wrote down that I really appreciated the distinction between like romance and love. And I feel like this whole section has it just adds a lot of like context to, even though it was written a long time ago, it adds a lot of understanding to like internet culture and like our generation's kind of obsession with like being entertained all the time, especially non-white people. So I really gained a lot from it, and I'm really excited to talk about it. I guess I'll just pass it. I'll pass it to Dan.
Okay. In regards to Area 3 Entertainment, I read the revised and expanded edition, and I have the 1984 edition. And entertainment in that version is only 5 pages. Um, some notes I had in regards to entertainment. It's an effective area of people activity because if you just look at the last 20 years, from like the year 2000 till now, like a whole bunch of stuff that was once considered like taboo is now normalized because you just look at all the various movies and stuff like uh, black males in a dress in various movies like Big Mama's House. I was a kid when that came out, and now we got like one of those movies like every year. I think they happen to come out in February too, like Black History Month. Like it's like a reminder or something. And the usual suspects, they have done a great job of dumbing down non-white people's attention spans. So, and one last thing I have is black people's pain, suffering, and death are seen worldwide, because one instance I could think of is the Philippines. The president over there, the usual suspects were saying something to him about how he was running this country, and he's like, "How are you going to tell me how to do this when you guys are killing black people over there?" So these images are seen worldwide, and I'll pass it over to Kwaku.
Yeah, so the area 3 entertainment. This one was I felt very straightforward. I did have a lot of questions regarding like how, what can be considered fun, under a system of racism and white supremacy. So I got a lot of insight as far as that. The codified ways to be entertained, and yeah, pretty much that's it. I'm excited to talk about it and get in depth. I'm hoping this discussion will allow me to understand it more and more fully. I find that the ones that are straightforward and sometimes are harder for me to talk about. So I'm looking forward to this. Yes, I will go ahead and popcorn. No, not yet.
Yeah, this was actually Area 3 entertainment was just, I loved it. I think I finally got a lot of answers because sometimes I say something, I'm just like, it already makes sense, like when people talk to me about things, I just, I want to use the phrase, like use your brain, like common sense, but I realize there's no common sense. So then I have to go back and say something like, let's go ahead and read page 126 of the code book in order to respond to people. But on page 126 of the code book pretty much sums up the entire Area 3 for me. It says, as long as white supremacy exists, all luxury, comfort, fun, entertainment, thrills, quote, parties, and or relaxation should be for the direct or indirect purpose of ending white supremacy and replacing it with justice. So that summed up everything. And anytime someone has something to tell me about something, that's going to be my phrase. So I'm glad that I finally got a phrase to say that I can refer back to. And I'm going to pass it to Carice.
This area, reading entertainment, was a very interesting area. I do feel like when Black people do get together, majority of the time, it's always something ending up violently, something ends up happening. That's why I don't like a group of like Black people doing something, or why I don't go to parties, or because it's always somebody, or it's always not constructive. So, and then we get ourselves into a situation we can't get out of. So it was just, I like the distinction of, we shouldn't be laughing at anything. And I feel like we laugh at things to keep from crying, and we laugh at our own despair and our own issues. And it's just really not funny, but it's something that I think people do to like a defense mechanism to basically, their sanity. So I'm really glad to that I read this page, and I'm glad to discuss it.
So we're just giving our little thoughts on Area 3 entertainment. Miss Williams and Mr. Edwards, if you guys want to share some words, be my guest.
I'm gonna go ahead if you don't mind. Good evening, Mr. Edwards. I'm so glad to get a chance to meet you on air. The thing that impressed me was on page 123 in the revised copy, and it's at the very top. It says, well, it really starts on 122. It says, what kind of fun parties should you attend, and what should the requirements of for self and others? And then it says the answer: do not attend any fun parties except for honest fun party. And I thought that was very interesting, is that I've never heard that. Well, okay, I knew about the fun part because every party that I ever attend, that's what we going to do, is to have fun. But then after reading the code, I realized that really wasn't fun. That was really chaotic stuff that we were doing and had no idea, but we called it fun. But then I liked the fact that how Mr. Fuller pulled in as business meeting as honest, I mean, as a honest fun party, right? And that's what something we're not used to. When we tend to look at business meeting, we are always thinking about it pertains to a financial situation, and that's when we sit down and we can be civil or whatever. But we need more of those, the honest fun parties, because then we know that we're only going to be around people who think like we do, or we know the requirements, because it was saying that one of the requirements is that no white people to be present. Now that's honest, because if you really want to be honest with codified people, you don't want to be in the presence of white people, because you know that's going to be chaotic, unless they're codified too, but most of them are not. And then it talked about no harmful drinks or harmful drugs, chemicals are consumed or used. No profane remarks are made. No person is present who is wearing body ornaments or wearing any covering or garment or other other things are necessary, and does not wear anything that would attract unnecessary attention. No touching of bodies except for males touching hands with females. Now that's honest, because it gives you a codified way of how to interact with one another, even at a party. Because most parties I've known, they were the fun parties, and it was all of the above, reverse, right? And this way, it takes you into a different comfort level, that you're able to sit and talk with people, and you're dealing with business, because replacing racism, white supremacy with justice is business. It's serious business. So when we have more parties like that, now I've never had one like that, but I'm thinking about having more like that, because it's important that we do that more often. That's all I have on that.
Yeah, that would be very constructive if we could, everyone could follow these points. No white people are present, no harmful drinks or chemicals. Just really would allow victims of white supremacy to it would give them more time. They would spend less time in front of mirrors, painting themselves with various chemicals and putting on various body piercings. It just reminds me of my my college days and interacting with my fellow inmates, and it's very like haunting to think about what we were doing for so-called fun, and just to say the least. Mr. Edwards, would you like to share a bit about the area of entertainment, and then we get into the discussion?
Not a whole lot. I'm enjoying listening to the readings and everyone's interpretation, or maybe not interpretation, but their thoughts on how those points apply, to their everyday lives, whether or not they practice them or not practice them. That's that's really a party for me. So when you start, really practicing counter-racist code, you become a strange person, a peculiar person to the rest of the world. And white people take notice of that. I remember being in meetings on the job and noticing something about myself, how I would really feel good when I hear someone tell the truth, for example. It all of a sudden, it just became so refreshing to hear the truth. A lot of Black people don't want to hear that. Sorry, that we don't want to hear the truth about a whole lot of things. Truth be told, and I would actually have to control my laughter, when hearing people say things that are true, or saying something and smiling about it, and people say, "What are you smiling about?" This is a serious conversation. Say, "Hey, when I'm smiling, I'm serious. When you hear me laughing, I'm serious. I'm serious all the time." And so other people will see that as, really peculiar. And at that point, you're not so much of an entertainment piece for white people. It's really an interesting interaction to watch it happen, number one, but to also be a part of that interaction. It's really interesting as well. So as you become, versed in counter-racist code and begin to practice this or practice that or whatever, you'll begin to notice things like that about how other people interact with you. And all of a sudden you're no fun, you become a peculiar person, as I said before. I'm just going to sit back and listen to the readings, and although I live alone, I'm having a party. So that's all I have to say for right now. Thank you.
He ate it. So I have a question for everyone, having been exposed to this material. What are your thoughts on gatherings? Like, what gatherings can be constructive? Which gatherings should Black people particularly avoid?
My personal experience, I feel that a lot of the gatherings that I've had have not ever been of constructive value, at least when non-white people have been involved. I think the only gatherings I've had that were of constructive value are maybe study groups in school, but those can quickly become unconstructive. I think it's hard for me to really create a codified gathering, or what would be considered a gathering of constructive value, because so many people that I would want to gather with aren't interested in doing anything constructive. When you come together with people, they want to hang out, for lack of a better word. They want to chill, for lack of a better word. Just basically do nothing of any kind of constructive value. I do have, one or two friends who might help me paint a wall or change a tire, but 9 times out of 10, it doesn't have any constructive value.
Yeah, for me, I would agree to what you said. I think that was really well put. And I would say avoid all gatherings. I don't think it's constructive for Black people to participate in any gatherings where it's like a ton of them, ton of us in one place. I think carrying things out through the digital ways could be the most constructive things, and not even having calling gathers anymore. Just calling things meetings and whatnot. Because yeah, in my experience, every gathering that victims of white supremacy participate in, there's no mention of producing justice. Therefore, totally worthless, to say the least.
For me, the whole idea of gatherings reminded me of, I think it's really dangerous to go to gatherings with white people, because like I went to one gathering that a white person hosted, and everyone else that was there was non-white, and there was so much like alcohol, Hennessy, types of drinks that, you know, have gotten into the Black community and have caused a lot of harm to the Black community. Purple swishers, lots of weed, and then looking back on it, I'm like, this person was doing this on purpose. You know, this person was gathering all of these Black people into the space to get them to drink and take drugs. And I don't know what kind of energy he got from it, but that's an example of just like when Neely Fuller talks about there shouldn't be any white people involved. That's exactly why, because they will try to poison you.
Yeah, I think that was a great example of the prison master just just gathering up his favorite prisoners and then showing them a good time, because this racist suspect, they were all there to celebrate his birthday, and he had grape flavored blunt wraps and like just grape flavored things, which is a very very racist if you understand racism and white supremacy, to say the least. I think.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that. I've noticed, you know, I have thankfully gotten out of that phase of wanting to party, but oftentimes when I did, the organizer was usually be somebody that was white, because, you know, they have the environment, they have the house, they have the money to kind of supply those unconstructive tools for people to engage in. And more often than not, the majority of the population involved are non-white people. And a lot of the chaos that erupted, you know, would involve non-white people. So I've definitely seen that kind of pattern. I mean, at the time I didn't notice it, but speaking about it now, I definitely do.
When I think of gathering, I oftentimes think of like, I know we mentioned like gathering like large groups, but I also think gathering in small groups as well. It probably is because I'm a little introverted, but I feel like there shouldn't even be like a gathering of a small group if you're not producing anything constructive. Like 2-3 people, like for what? To sit and hang out and look at each other all day? Like, I mean, what is there really to do? One of the things I've like been trying to do for myself is like, I really don't hang out much. The only time I hang out is like with Ezekiel or Kwaku. So I have to like even limit that. Like, we can't just be hanging out, you know. And like, we have lots of constructive ways now to like, if we want to like be next to each other, I guess, if you will. It's like, oh, let's read together or whatever, you know, let's build something or let's work on these blog posts or whatever it is. It's just like we can do something that's of constructive value, and can produce justice. And he's also helping me with some of my research too, which is nice. So it's like being able to bounce off ideas off each other and like really use like, not really use, but really tap into each other for like, whether it's energy or tapping each other for something that he knows of constructive value that he learned from some white person, or I know from some white person, like, oh, I just learned this today at work in this meeting about some website building. And it's funny because we both had meetings with the same website building thing. So then we got to share ideas like, oh, I learned this person told me this. Oh, what they tell you? Oh, you got, oh, okay, you know. And we were able to like bounce things off of each other, which was super cool because, you know, white supremacy just telling us all the information. But I just feel like even when it's just like, oh, let's go hang out with blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, I'm okay. I like to be at home though. So I don't know. It's just I have to mention that. I kind of think it goes for smaller groups as well.
I think also it goes for like the small gathering things for like family things. Cause I feel like family gatherings too are not really a good use of time, and it just reinforces rituals that are probably based in white supremacy, and I don't think you get a lot out of it anyway, except for people like guilting you if you don't go, and then you getting there and realizing that you're wasting your time.
That's a great point. Yes, family gatherings. And I'm not going to move sections yet, but also in the beginning where it talks about that whole show off thing, like recently I made a move. So everyone wants to like come by and like see the place, you know, like, oh, let me come see, whether it's family or friends. It's just like our associates or just people want to come see the place. And I'm just in my head thinking like, for what, you know? Like, why do you want to see it? Like, what do you need to see? Like, does a picture suffice? You want to come in and like hang out and like you want us to like show off our things? Is that what it is? You know? So it's just like this whole idea, and I think it's just the idea of like thinking of parents as well who are just like wanting to come by to come see like, oh, what did my children did, or what did my child do? Like, let me be so proud so I can go tell the neighbors down the street. Like, it's just very interesting.
Yeah, on the note about family, I noticed too when like the small gatherings.
Victim unit.
Yeah, victim unit. Thank you. When when we get together, we oftentimes single somebody out and just make fun of them, or I don't know what the word is, like just bag on them, for lack of a better word. We all kind of get in and terrorize that person for a little bit. Then we switch. Then we set our targets on somebody else and start terrorizing them for a little bit. Yeah, as far as I wanted to talk about show-offism, but I'll let anybody answer the question, because I have questions about show-offism.
Mr. Kiyata, the question was your thoughts on gatherings, because they may have changed since reading this portion. So if you want to chime in.
So I just got the updated version. Came in the mail. So I felt like I was missing so much.
Let's show it again. That's the word guy. Did you get the other one?
Did you get
Oh
that?
shit! This isn't it.
Uh-oh.
The word guide is useful too, though. But
that's very valuable too. I have that one as well. It's very. I would say it's worth it, but
that's not what we're studying.
We are studying it. Like I am utilizing it. So is Dan. Now
well, I was gonna say this goes back to Area 2 education. We're slow learners. But my thoughts on gatherings. Well, this is a constructive gathering. We're talking about constructive information. Even though we're getting our laughs in, you got to get in on the system, or else you'll go crazy. But as far as gatherings, and also the first bullet point on no white people are present, that immediately brings to mind like the meme of like the cookout meme. And you know how a white person, all they have to do is say racism is bad, and then all the black people invite them to the cookout. And then also as far as gatherings, this is on one of the interviews with Gus when he was speaking with Mr. Fuller. And Mr. Fuller was going in on this example about black people getting together. He was like, hey man, come over here, let's smoke this thing, or let's do some drinking and stuff. And then Mr. Fuller's like, one thing leads to another, and it's like, N-word, hey man, quit playing, I was just joking. And then pow, 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 several bullets later, race soldiers show up on the scene with yellow caution tape flowing in the breeze.
Yeah,
but yeah, look that up. It's an interview with Gus and Mr. Fuller. And that's my thoughts on gatherings.
Harsh reality. Yeah, anyone else want to chime in before you?
For gatherings, when it's stated we shouldn't be in gatherings having fun and etc. I don't have an issue with that because I don't really go to gatherings. Or I kind of like, I'm the type of person if somebody say, oh, let's go out to eat. And I ain't seen them in years or months. I'm the type, I'll be like, oh, okay. But then I dread going until the day of. And then I get happy that it's canceled. But I don't have an issue what he stated because it just makes me more of what I already am. On top of that, as far as victim unit gathering, when we gather, when I gather with my family, it's only for basically business. Because my dad is the type, he used to gather when he was younger, but he don't gather anymore. And he's the type, if he see a group of us together, even if we are his victim unit, he'll leave. He'll go upstairs. If he's not the type, everybody knows like my dad's not the type to talk. Only if he has something constructive to tell you or that you want to learn or teach. The main person he really talks to is my mom in that sense. But to us, it's only when it's something knowledgeable that he could teach us. So he's kind of a dude that is like, he's not a lollygag chatter box. So he just taught us that. I used to always think, well, why he don't like gathering? Like we here, and like why is he going upstairs? Why every time he see a whole bunch of us, he runs upstairs? Like he don't want to talk to us. But it's just my dad's not that type of person anymore. And now that when we do gather, it's my mom likes it, you know, but we only gathering due to business. We got to handle business situations out of the states, et cetera, or we gather for the kids. But other than that, we don't gather to enjoy ourselves. Like that's just something that we kind of don't do anymore.
That all these what everyone is sharing has brought to back to for my memory this really great example of why victim units should not gather. And the first point in this story is that this story starts with a gathering on celebrating a uncle's birthday, and that's the first error. There's nothing about any black person dead or alive that should be celebrated, given a whole day to celebrate. So it was my uncle's birthday celebration, and it started like Neely Fuller says. It starts off fun with good intentions, and everyone starts to having there to have fun, and then people drink a little too much, and eventually my uncle's brother gets into a physical fight with his cellmate. And it's just why we should not gather, because even in victim unit, there's nothing that we can do without a code to contain what has been done to us. And I really, really appreciate this explanation. So why does things like this happen when Black people gather? And why I asked the question can be found here on 121, where the code says, explanation. Should I read the question? Well, I'm going to read I'll read what's before the explanation as well. It says, avoid making comparisons between yourself and other non-white people. Avoid measuring yourself by watching what other non-white people do. Do not seek excuses to nitpick or gossip, and particularly do not, for any reason, spend time, energy, or money trying to show off. Explanation. Many non-white people spend too much time comparing themselves with each other. They enjoy watching each other. They spend much time and energy gossiping about each other and showing great interest in nitpicking the trivial comings and goings of each other. Many of them spend the better part of their existence seeking to promote jealousy, envy, and snobbery among themselves. However, if one understands anything about the people of the known universe, one should certainly understand that, considering all things, there is nothing involving a non-white person to envy, nothing to be jealous about, and nothing to be snobbish about. There is nothing about such behavior that is constructive or complementary. Such behavior only helps to maintain the status quo of injustice and incorrectness, particularly the injustice and incorrectness expressed in the form of white supremacy. It is important to remember, however, that no people in the known universe are the quality of people that any people should be. Therefore, there's absolutely nothing about any people that should provoke jealousy, envy, snobbery, gossip, or praise. Yet, that's what all social gatherings are mostly about, participating in one of those things. And I may be incorrect, but for my scene experiences, I don't think so. Anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, I actually had that section highlighted, squared, circled, whatever, so many times. That really hit home in this section, and that's something that I'm really intentionally thinking about daily. Is a whole like gossiping part. It's like really keeping it zero, you know. Like if I have something to say, I have to just like internalize it. Like just okay, don't say anything, don't say anything, you know, because sometimes it just gets to the point where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I need to just say this. But um, yeah, it's just like the gossiping part. Everything else, I kind of just was like, I think I'm the shit. So I don't have any like desire to be anyone else because I feel like I have some qualities. I just love myself, you know, but not to just like show off either, because you know that was another thing. But yeah, that section definitely hit home. Definitely hit home.
Mm.
Yeah. So on the show offism, yeah, I would need. He puts show off in quotation marks, so I kind of need a definition of what he means by showing off. Because if I'm showing off something that for basic show offisms, if I'm showing off that the something that the white people allowed me to obtain, and I'm showing somebody it because I feel it has constructive value. Would that be considered showing off, or would that be considered? You know, I might have I might have bought something that I feel is of constructive value towards somebody. So if I'm showing that to them, is that considered showing off? Or how do you go about that?
What are your intentions? Are you showing them to just show them? Or are you showing them and helping them to use it so that they can find constructive value for it too?
Well, thank you for that, Ash. My intentions are that they, see this thing, notice the constructive value that I have placed in it, and that it may be useful to them. So therefore, it could, they could use it. Is that considered showing off?
I don't know, but wait. What's that?
Oh,
I just want to comment really quickly, and I'll let Edward. I want to comment on what Ray Nana said. A good practice one can try to get out of gossiping is just to what Neely Fuller says. He said what she said, or she did what she did, and that's all that needs to be said about any other Black person's behavior. But yes, Mr. Edwards.
Uh, oh, yes, sir. I had a question about so what are you showing it off in order to do? And that's a question to the gentleman that raised the situation about showing off something that white people have allowed him to be able to have that he thinks has constructive value.
I'll give an example. I may have bought, a new pair of weights or something. This really great pair of weights. You told me you're interested in, working out or getting some weights of your own. So I bought these weights, and now I'm showing them to you. So yeah, that kind of example.
Okay, so you're showing them off in order to do what? because you don't have to show them the weights. I mean, you can show them an ad in the paper of the weights. So it's not just the weights themselves, right? It's the fact that you now own them. So you're showing them off in order to do what?
I guess I would, you know, you can here they are, you know, so you can see them, you can use them. Maybe they provide the constructive value to you that I placed in them.
So is this somebody that I mean, within this hypothetical situation, is this someone that has asked you to teach them how to work out, or they've asked you questions about weights, or I mean,
yes, in this situation they have.
Okay. And they consider you a weight expert?
I don't know about an expert, but maybe somebody that has, I guess, more information than they would.
Because they can get information off the internet about weights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they can watch videos of people working out, people telling them how to use their weights without injuring themselves, how to use their weights to build more muscle mass, how do you, so on and so on. They can get that information off the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Did this person, and I don't want to belabor this, but did this person ask you to let them know when you bought the weights?
No, no, they didn't.
Oh, okay. It all goes back to values.
Mm.
Where is all of this going? What's the ultimate objective here for you? Showing them that you have weights. What's the ultimate objective? That's the reason I asked the question. In order to do what? You're showing them the weights in order to do what? And then in order to do what after that? And in order to do what after that? I mean, where is all that going? That's how you figure out whether or not it's going to be constructive. Something is not constructive just because you say it's constructive or because I say it's constructive, or, it has to have constructive value. So if you're starting a weight training program and instructing other people, then that's one thing. But just saying, hey, let me show you my weights. I know you didn't ask me to show them to you. I know you didn't ask me to let you know when I bought them, but let me show them to you anyway. That's a different situation altogether. So it's really important for people to be truthful with themselves, not honest. Be truthful with themselves about what it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
Be truthful about the ultimate objective. That's extremely important.
Okay. Yeah. Going through that, thank you for this. I definitely have. That's definitely something I need to work on myself. I think I have been, showing off, and maybe I haven't been completely, like you said, Mr. Williams, truthful with why I'm doing this and why I'm showing people these things, especially when they didn't ask.
Right. And we all do it. This is not an indictment of you. We all do. I catch myself, I have to stop myself sometimes, from doing it. And people will come back later and say, well, why didn't you tell me you had this? Why would I have to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you never asked me about or showed any interest with me about, So, yeah, we all do it, man. We just have to be cognizant of the fact that we do. and how we do it and when we're doing it, so that we can begin to minimize ourselves doing that.
That's I want to comment and then segue into the next question, because it definitely involves being truthful to oneself. But I want to comment on how when I was first of all, we've been trained by racist men and racist women who've been trained to be people who seek attention, and a lot of ways to acquire that attention is by showing off. When I was very, very brain trashed, I used to wake up pretty consistently, and then smoke a blunt, and then post me smoking a blunt on the internet for people to see that I was smoking a blunt. They would say, "Hey, Swas smoking a blunt, that's cool." Maybe I should smoke a blunt too. And just spreading poison, spreading that. And that's what I did for entertainment. But those are the rituals that Black people are trained to do, and I'm glad that, of course, I don't participate in that behavior anymore. But we must be honest about why we were doing things and what was it for.
It reminds me of something I heard about during slavery. The slave owners would dress up their slaves. Some of the slaves would be dressed up better than the other slaves, and they would and when they would go to church, and they would give them nicer things, and as a show off, and the slave owners would be showing off their slaves, and of course, the slaves that had the better clothes and the better look and the hair and whatever, and saw the slaves that were less, would look down on them based on what the slave master gave them. So, and I think that has continued through society.
Oh yeah, they do that for us so that we can show off to each other. See, we don't show off to them. I've watched, just one quick example. I watched guys when I was younger who were really into building sound systems for our cars. I mean, really elaborate stuff. Who needs 12, 15-inch woofers in a Mustang, right? Who needs that, right? And watch them as they go through different neighborhoods, blasting their music. But when they go through the white neighborhoods, they turn the music down. Why do Black people do that? See, all you have to do is just watch people. You'll see examples of it all over the place. Us showing off to each other.
Yeah.
Just watch. Just watch.
Yeah. I see Carice with a hand. You want to have a comment, miss?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how they say parties are non-constructive, right? So how do you explain to a child that, birthday parties is, and how is, how would you explain to a child these things are non-constructive if, children rely on children interaction?
The way I would still create situations where the child can still engage with other children, but the whole concept of happy birthday to you and wearing those cute little hats and having a big birthday cake, I don't know how. I think I would just end all of that celebration.
But how do you tell a child that? You know what I mean? Because I don't have an issue with that. Like, I don't like doing birthday parties. I do them for the sake of her, but I'd rather just like, hey, let's go to San Diego to the zoo, or you know what I mean? Like something in that value, as opposed to let's just have a whole bunch of people do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, I just the same. way a child can understand that in a war, I think a child can understand that in war we shouldn't be having birthday party, just like a child needs to be told that there is a war being waged against them. And I think it would be a great opportunity to instead of taking your child to do special things on so-called special days, randomly take your child to the zoo, just randomly do it or plan in advance without telling them, and then you could create that happiness that Neely Fuller talks about that comes in these rare in these moments. And I think that would be very constructive and a good way to compensate for getting rid of traditional celebrations. And I'm sure people have other ideas.
I agree with that. The only thing I would say is I wouldn't advise taking a child to a zoo.
I was just gonna say that too.
Oh, yeah, while we're on the stairs, just anyone else want to answer the question? Or I see Kweku and Anaya with hands raised. Be my guest.
I think Miss Williams might want to say something.
Thank you. I've had background in childhood development, right? And it's a known thing that in childcare, usually these birthday party ideas come up, right? But I noticed something that some of the religious groups do, especially the Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't celebrate parties nor holidays. So it's, to me, is something that a parent has to decide for their child. Do they want them to participate in it? And if there's a child having a birthday party that day, let your child stay home. If you don't want them, into that, because children do what they see other children do. So if they think this is cool, like we were talking before about fun parties, birthday parties are supposed to be fun. So most children want to be a part of it because it's a part of being a part of the clique. But that's something a parent needs to decide for their own child. Do I want to entertain this? Because once you open that door to birthday parties, it's going to be very hard to close. So I know when I was a teacher, I had parents that sometimes, because of their religious beliefs or whatever, they just didn't let their child participate. And I didn't have a problem, and the educators are not supposed to have a problem. So that, to me, I just think that's something that a parent needs to sit down with their child and let them know, if I want to be participating in this with you, because if you don't say anything, they're going to continue to want to do it. And I think that birthday party links to those other fun parties when they get older. Because they've already got used to, okay, it's my birthday, I'm going to have a party, and all of this expense goes into it. A lot of times the parents can't even afford it, but because it's their birthday, they don't want their child embarrassed or feeling left out or whatever. But there are other ways to do that, other than a birthday party. But I think that's just on a parent's side, if they want their child to be a part of it, and they have a right to decide. But if you open that door, it's going to be hard to close later.
Thank
That's
you.
all I have.
Because I know it probably would be, but I feel like the transition wouldn't be as hard. It'll just kind of be a harder conversation. But I felt victim to when I was younger. None of my siblings, none of us had birthday parties. None of us. And I used to go to birthday parties, but we, as like my parents, they never, celebrated like our birthdays like that. So I felt victim to the whole, well, I didn't have it, so hey, she can, have it because I didn't have that. But I get it now.
Well said. Are those hands raised? Natalia, would you like to have something to share?
Yeah, I just want to hear your thoughts on, because oftentimes, how kids grow up, they want to show off. I think kind of touched on this a bit, but I think it's like me, I don't know what to say anymore. Like, I didn't ask, nor do I want to see it, but it's just like, oh, look what I can do, you know? And it's like this whole nature of like kids or children, wanting our offsprings, whoever, just wanting to show off all the time. And I know it's because of like, that's what they're taught to do. And it's like they want to put on a whole show for us or just for anyone who walks through the door. But it's like, how do I even respond to that? It's like, oh, I don't really want to see it. But it's just like, oh, that's not a constructive use of our time. How about we do something else, you know? But it's just like being able to say that nicely.
Yeah, I would get into question mode, and yeah, it's really kids are definitely taught early to like show and tell, you know, showing off. It's very conditioned, but I always go into question mode and say, hey, why do you want to show me your XYZ or show me you doing XYZ? Yes, Miss Ash.
I feel like I don't know if it's necessarily conditioned or if it's just like a part of growing up, because I feel like if you were maybe a child that was like living, I don't know, somewhere, like if you were like getting an insect or something to like, you just want to show your parents to make sure that you could eat it first. Like if you caught something, you know, I feel like it's a part of kids' nature, but I feel like for our generation of kids, you just have to kind of instill in them like they should be doing this for their own growth and for themselves. So just like ask them like, how did it make you feel when you did this? Like, what did you gain from it? Like, how can you like, you know, and like not be like, oh, that's so nice. Oh, I like this. Oh, just because that's what they're looking for, right? Is that external validation. So just remind them, how can they validate themselves internally? Like, what do you like about it? What do you not like? And also helping them being able to critique it. Like, so not just like saying, oh, I like it so much, being like, oh, this is what you should work on, this is not. So that even when they're showing something off, it's maybe you can gradually turn it from, instead of showing off, getting advice or critique. You know what I mean?
That's kind of hard because you know how in school they learn that early as well as school, like show and tell, or bring something that you feel like that you did or that you created, or et cetera, to show to your classmates. I feel like they seek validation, you know, from their teachers as well, and the class that they're in. So would it be hard to have that structure value at home if the foundation is strong at home for them to not show off, but even though they have to go to school to basically show off in a different way?
I wanted to comment, but I'll let Ben go ahead.
Oh, this is a good discussion, man. This is really enlightening. Good stuff, Ash, to, you know, deep, to really see the thin line between constructive sharing and showing off. Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say. It'll come back in a minute.
Yeah, kind of commenting on what Carice said. I feel that, you know, with, you know, children often are competing for the attention of their teachers, so they will try to show off, you know, to try and get the attention, like, oh, look what I can do, or pay more attention to me than these other kids. And, you know, in Yurugu, it teaches us, you know, that's a trait of competitiveness, is a trait of European culture, European behavior. So for me, if somebody would, you know, a kid showing off, you know, I would maybe ask them directly, are you showing off right now? I don't know how well that would work, but you know, often a lot of times I find myself, you know, kids wanting to show off to me, and I don't want to hurt their feelings, so I just go along with it. But I need to honestly practice being more codified, and, you know, letting them know that it's not like what you're doing is showing off, and we're in a war right now. So
I feel like also like if you're a kid, what you've been on this planet for 2, 4, X amount of years, everything is new to you. If you're learning a new skill, it's very exciting and it's a very like enriching experience and you want to share that with someone. I think it's more like adults' responses is conditioning kids to show off. Because I don't think that when they're initially showing you these things, they're trying to show off. They're just saying, I've learned a new skill. What do you think about it, etc. It's until we're constantly like, that's so amazing. Oh my God, I love it, blah, blah, blah. That type of thing that it's reinforcing that type of behavior, if that makes sense.
yeah, it does.
Add some context to it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Because every time she thinks she'll show off something, I shut her down real quick. But that was prior to me knowing things that I know now. That makes sense. I just don't like somebody that shows something that I know other kids don't have or lack. Like, what's the purpose of it and what's the point? So I will shut her down real quick. But now I have a more valid reason why I'm shutting you down.
And just to add to that, like it's okay to like show someone it, but it's like if you need to show multiple people, like I don't like that's where I think it becomes excessive. Like you can show one person and be like, oh, look what I can do to get that validation. But like going elsewhere and like performing and like, you know, like doing all of these things to like show others, like show off to others, because at the end of the day, it is showing off. Because like if you learn something, it's like, ooh, I learned it. That's cool. Let me show someone. Is just like, hey, look what I can do. I can do this now. You know, so it's kind of like an iffy, it's like a weird line of like showing off and like, no, it has to be showing off, because either way, it's like, hey, look what I can do. Like, even if you learn a new task, like if I learn something new and I were to like, oh, look what I learned this, and that. And again, with nobody asking, that's showing off. It has no constructive value to them.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it reminds me kind of what Ash was talking about as far as like adults' responses. It makes me think, you know, some kids will want that validation and that attention, and they, you know, because of the way adults may respond to them, you know, showing off. You know, I have my sibling now. When you ask her what she wants to be, she says she wants to be a comedian when she grows up. So I don't know where down the line, you know, that kind of validation and that showing off, she enjoyed that so much that she got that kind of stimulation where it led her to the conclusion that I should be a comedian. Because I don't know what kind of constructive value being a comedian brings, or even how a child comes to that. So that's something I would love to learn, get you guys' thoughts on.
I mean, no child comes to that until someone puts it in their head. Because no child, whenever a kid learns something and then someone's like, oh, now you can be this, they internalize that. But they don't actually like take into effect the amount of work that goes in. Like, I'm sure your sibling is not actually going to go on a stage and like perform comedy, but she knows that if she tells people I want to be a comedian, it gets a reaction from people, right? But if you actually tell her what the type of work that goes into that, I don't think that they would actually want to do that.
Yes, great response. I was gonna say something like that too.
Oh, I'd like to add something. I'm not a parent, but if you got your kids like parked in front of the TV, that gives room for white concepts in their head. Like if you don't watch TV, then you don't have those images burned into like your memory. That's where they're like imitating this showing offism from. You know, if you watch your kid long enough, again, I don't have kids, you might see that they're imitating it from this one show because they've seen this episode like 3 different times, and that's where they got the behavior from. So, I mean, if I end up with a kid, they ain't watching TV. Reading is more important than watching TV.
Agreed. Can I add something, please?
Oh, please do.
Okay, on page 127, it says, when presented with a song, a story, a dance, a picture, or a poem, ask the following questions. What exactly is the constructive message of that song, story, dance, picture, or poem? And it says explanation. According to the compensatory logic, every song, story, dance, picture, or poem should have a message that causes a person to think, speak, and act constructively. So I think that when um, a child is doing that, that's a good time to pose that question, because to me, show off is a negative and a positive, because when you think about learning, the instructor or teacher's in front of you and she's teaching you. But a part of what she does when she finishes, she wants the student to regurgitate or repeat what she has taught them. So that's a good show off to me, because then she realizes the child is learning what she presented. But then the negative side is when the show off is into the point of a bragging or being boasting or egotistic to that point. I think that's when it becomes negative. But that's just my view. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Ms. Williams. I also think it's like a lot of kids nowadays are showing off material possessions because of what Dan was saying, the things that they watch. Like a lot of kids don't even watch TV nowadays. They just watch YouTube videos of people who have stuff. And so now like kids are obsessed with material possessions. So I think it's also better to encourage, if they're gonna show off, at least show off something that they're doing that's constructive versus just stuff that they have.
Yeah, thanks for that. A good example of white supremacy 101 involving entertainment, show offism, and just how white people just really, really, really do not care about children. Like so of course our especially so of course non-white children aren't gonna be taken care of if they don't care about their own children. And a good look into this mentality and this mindset can be found on this YouTube channel called Daddy of Five, where this white family so-called pranks their children, but it's really just them terrorizing the children to the point where they're turning red and crying, and the dad is always abusing the one of the childs with glasses. Like he literally, I saw a video of him pushing this child like face first into a shelf in the name of a prank, and this child is like crying and like seems to be bleeding after these so-called pranks. So I'm like, wow, this is entertainment for white people to terrorize their kids to the point where they're crying. But I'm definitely gonna do host some kind of study on that dynamic. But yeah, entertainment. I'm sure that really tacky, trashy, and terroristic behavior that they have spread to us, because that's where we get our behavior from, white people.
So as long as we're gathering for educational reasons and spiritual reasons, constructive reasons, it's okay. Or not. No gatherings? Because we're social creatures, the studies have been done, endorphins and different chemicals get released in your body, and white supremacy promotes isolation. They don't want us connecting and getting together.
Have we been made social creatures? Because I listened to a lecture of how Black people were like thriving pre-white supremacy, and they were like doing deep meditation, like experiencing like all these different states of being alone, So I
they were doing all that stuff alone because they had a group that they could hunt with and forage food with together.
Yeah.
So it's like humans definitely need each other.
Yeah. So I would say gatherings, if they are of constructive value, like I would consider this like a meeting type gathering where we're sharing constructive information. But yeah, like, can you give me an example of a constructive spiritual gathering?
Like a drum circle. And then you have some speakers that share some history and some traditional religious ceremonial stuff and that kind of thing, you know, information and spirituality.
Well, if a person is like, you know, gaining some kind of like clarity that's going to allow them to produce justice a little bit more better from those kind of gatherings, that I would say could be, but I don't know.
If white people are there, then it's not constructive.
Oh yeah, that right there. Yeah, like these four, 1, 2, 3, 4, these 5 points. Yeah, if any of them are being broken, then it's not constructive, and it's not right off the bat. It's a non-constructive gathering if we're following code, which is we all should be attempting to do so.
I have a question. On page 122, he says, all so-called sports and entertainment should be intentionally designed to educate about methods of replacing non-justice with justice. Such activity can be thought of as edutainment. And my question was like, do you think that education can even exist as entertainment, or is it a degradation / simplification of knowledge? Like, the medium that we get the information from, does that not affect how we learn from it, if we can even learn from it, if it's fun?
Yeah, I'm a slow learner.
Can you reframe the question?
Like,
Make it simple for a 10-year-old.
You think that like you can really learn something well if it's edutainment?
I would have to say yes. I think you can be, I think there's definitely times where you can be learning and you're entertained. You know, you can be learning something of constructive value while being entertained by it. That
I mean, like the merging of education into a form that is entertaining, not that the education is entertaining in and of itself. It's like how they say, like, make things fun for kids, make learning fun for kids.
Well, don't they have like shows for toddlers that teach them how to count and colors and, you know, et cetera, things like that? Is that kind of the gist of it?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like those are like destructive, because it kind of starts kids off with having, you know, these bright colors, these characters, and really having to be, like, you know, stimulated in that kind of way in order to, you know, sit down and pay attention. So in that kind of sense, I feel like it's kind of like unconstructive, especially to start kids out like that, because it's something you can't keep up with that forever. You know, like you know, they do that until they're 4 or 5, and then they start going to school, and then, you know, it's not built like that, at least in my experience, in my opinion.
And just to add to that, one of the things that you mentioned, quite cute, is that it's not built like, but in education, you learn so many songs. Like in elementary, like you have so many songs for things. Even in math, like they come up with like these equation songs, and you're like, ooh, cross the thing, times the 2, blah, 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 divide. Like, you know, you just start learning these equations through some song. But the reason I bring this up is because I feel like it depends. The constructive value depends on the person. Like, it's an individual. So it's like, for me, that may be constructive for me because I'm able to learn this through this song. Like, I like songs and poems and things like that. It's easier for me to learn it because I can remember it like that. But someone that doesn't like songs just may not be able to remember. They're just confused and entertained the whole time, thinking they can just dance around. But I just think it depends on like the person, or the person learning.
I just feel like, are you really learning it though? Or are you learning the song and then once you're in the exam, regurgitating the song?
Yeah, that reminds me of the song Concentration. You know, concentration is the game, keep the rhythm, or you be out the game and then you got to get a subject and everybody starts going on in that subject. I feel like kids don't really learn from that. That's just kind of fun.
I think again. Oh.
Yo, you go ahead and then I'll go.
Okay, I just think it depends on the person though. Like for me, I've learned so many songs. I mean, I may not sing them now because what do I need to sing a song for? I know it. But it's like for me, after a certain point, I didn't have to sing the song anymore because I actually know it. Like I know that the X is outside the box and I gotta divide and whatever, A plus B divided by whatever. Like I start to know these things. So it's like I don't need the song anymore. I think a song helps with
She doesn't live here.
Like keeping like it helps with like keeping what is it? Like the equation in your head or the symbols or whatever in your head constantly, because as we mentioned, there is slow learners, or maybe it might take a whole like 5 months to learn something, but if you already moved on in school from that subject, there's no way you're gonna learn it unless you keep saying it, which is like a song or I don't know. I just find it useful. That's my opinion.
Yeah, Ray's right. I think kids learn in different ways, and then some kids might learn off the rhythm. All kids learn, some are, physical learners, some are, visual learners, some are just types of learning. And I think if a song has to, like the alphabet song has to stick in your head for you to know the alphabet, then yes, it's kind of a way that kids do learn. That's what makes learning fun, because sometimes learning is boring and kids don't get into what they're learning.
Exactly. You took part of what I was going to say. That alphabet song is a prime example of edutainment. That's probably one of the first songs we learned as children. And then we get the counting song or whatever. But because basically we learn in different styles. And like you said, visual, audio, the song is everything to them, right? Because that's the way they learn. So to me, I have found out, now I remember me growing up, to me, learning was always not fun. But if I had a teacher who made learning fun, I really adored that teacher. And I was quickly ready to learn anything she taught because she made the learning fun. And I think that's what's happening with our children today, is that learning is not fun. And if it's not fun, I mean, by the time you get to middle school, it don't have to be fun then. But in those early stages, it has to be able to keep that attention span, because children have a very short attention span. And because they do, if you don't find ways to keep their attention, then they're going to get bored and they're going to just walk away or not listen. But if you can make it fun, then they will learn. I remember I had children, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds reading, right? And none of the other teachers, I'm saying this to brag on myself, I'm just saying because I learned different than what I was taught. And I found out that because I made reading fun, then they were willing to do it, that to the point when the mothers would come to pick the children up, it's time to go, and they don't want to go. They said, no, we want to stay. That's when you really have done your job as an instructor or as a teacher, that you've made it so much fun, they're not even ready to go home. And if we learn to do that with our young people, then we'll find out we'll get more out of them. And then at a certain point, they won't really need it. But those children, every so often I hear from one of the parents or so, and I ask them, well, how they're doing in school. They say they are doing excellent. Now, to me as an educator, that makes me feel great, because then I realized what I instilled with them within those early years was enough to produce them to go on to the other grades and still excel. So edutainment is really important. We can't just throw it out. I'm not saying everybody will learn that way, but there are at least half of them will have to learn just that way through edutainment. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also thanks for that, Miss Williams. That's also a great way to compensate for their some children who may not be able to learn through the more serious traditional methods of sharing sharing knowledge. So
Well, I don't want to belabor the point, but I did just still want to add because I just noticed so many people who have an issue being in the book club because they do not like reading. It's not fun for them. So I do think the transitional point to like edutainment has to end at some point because at some point people have to be aware that you have to learn things without it being fun.
agreed.
I also wanted to add something that's important that I've learned, like especially teaching, is that like sometimes we're teaching things to people who aren't interested, you know, and I think that has to be a point where it's like, okay, you're not interested and we have to just move forward with that. But also like speaking in like children and kids, like they're taught so many things as kids. We go through like history, science, blah blah blah, like, and then as we learn, we get older, we have something that we love, like, oh, I love to do art, I love to do bio, or I love to do this, and I love to do that. And you pick that and you hone in, and you're able to learn something like for the full extent. But I think as kids, it's like you're forced to learn things that you are just not interested in learning, you know? So it's like me learning history, that was my fault. You know, US history just wasn't my thing. And I still don't know it, but I passed with A's, but it's just like, you know, it's just like being forced to learn something is different than like having an interest, because you might not need a song if you're already interested in the topic, but you might need a song if you're not interested at all. And it just helps the process.
So, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, one thing I was going to add in regards to edutainment, if you got your children watching this, it's like the white supremacy is already within the program, like, or the cartoon or animation or whatnot it is. Because you know the white male child might be the leader of the whole group, and then like the black children in the group, whether it be male or female, they might be all the way at the back of the line. Like, I don't know, maybe could do a case study in this, like take Magic School Bus for example. You got Miss Fritzl, white woman leading the class, and the two black children in the class, can't remember their names. I don't even think they're sitting together on the bus. I think they're all the way at the back. So that's all I got.
Malcolm. Sorry to interrupt, but those are the names.
So, what is worthy of laughter? This is a question I pose to y'all. Ben, I think you're muted.
Absolutely nothing.
He may be on the phone. So what is worthy of laughter? Kwaku has said absolutely nothing. Anyone else like the answer?
I can say why I say absolutely nothing, because under a system of racism and white supremacy, what are we laughing about? Everybody is dying, everybody is struggling, everybody is being the person that they're not supposed to be. So what are we laughing about? Are we laughing at the fact that this person is unable to achieve their ultimate maximum potential? Or, well, you should be laughing at yourself, because under a system of racism and white supremacy, you're not able to reach your maximum and full potential either. So what are we really laughing about? Absolutely nothing.
Well said. For me, I would say, I've always had a problem with laughing. Like everything was for some reason funny to me, almost as if I like subconsciously or consciously like knew that like I was in some kind of sick joke. Like this world was just kind of sick joke that I was plopped on. And I think what's worthy of laughter is whatever contains like your tragic condition of white supremacy, because you really do have to just laugh or just funnel all their energies and frequencies and feelings and thoughts that you receive from experiencing white supremacy in effect. You have to sometimes channel that into like laughter, or maybe one may even like explode from like just the stuff I see personally, like I have to laugh, or I think I would go crazy, or I think I would become even more sicker than I am under the system of white supremacy, because I believe I've been made very, very ill in regards to how I experience like the world and emotions and feelings and thoughts and all that stuff is all out of whack because of white supremacy. So yeah, but I agree that outside of that, nothing is like it's very serious. But it's just like, you know, sometimes all I feel that, you know, I can do is just have a chuckle about the situation, because, you know, that's just the situation. Sometimes people go crazy in war. Maybe I'm just a high functioning crazy person.
No, 05, I can totally relate to that. As a kid, I was the laughing person of the family. Like if someone like passed away or if someone did whatever, I just completely laughed. I That's how I funneled all my emotions. Like someone would sit there and be telling me a sad story and I'd just be sitting there laughing about it. But it's not that I'm laughing because it's funny, but it's more of just like that's the only way I knew how like to express myself, was just to laugh, because it was like a nervous laugh, I guess would call it. But maybe, who knows, maybe it was funny to me at the time, I don't know, but I just call it a nervous laugh now. But it's just even sometimes, even now when I hear like stories, I'm just like, what do you want me to say or do, you know? But thank you. I totally relate to that, and it could be possibly because like the childhood I grew up in as well. It's just like there was too much stuff going on that I couldn't really like transfer my emotions properly, and the only way that I could was just to laugh about it all. So
Yeah, I think people laugh from crying. I mean, I laugh at my bad conditions all the time. And every time I make a joke about it, people be like, oh my God, like, what's wrong with you? But it's just, I don't know, a way of expressing yourself, but not trying to be indulgent to it to the point where you're crying or losing yourself. So I think that's why people laugh, not because it's really funny, but because it's just a way of expressing yourself without really expressing yourself.
Wow, that's really all sad.
That reminds me about just laughing and being funny. Reminds me of like being in school, how it was kind of a competition to be the funniest kid, or get everybody to laugh. Like that was honestly something that motivated me, at least every day, was to get somebody to laugh at me, somebody to laugh at something I said or did. And it was it's very strange that was one thing that if I was to accomplish anything today, that would have to be the one thing that I accomplished, was making a fool out of myself for somebody to laugh.
Yeah, that's the training. Class clown. I was a pretty impressive class clown, and I lived for those laugh riots and those disruptive forms of entertainment. And yeah, we would terrorize our teachers, and that was our entertainment. That's how we would have fun. But yeah, just blame all this on like racist man, racist woman for just creating such monsters and monstrosities.
Yes, from jump, just being silly, stupid, primitive, whatever other word you want to characterize it as.
Pitiful.
Pitiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that show-offism, it starts at an early age in elementary school. I think we might all be guilty of doing this in the call. When you go to throw trash away in like 5th grade, you got to do a layup to the trash can. That show-offism starts there.
Another question for everyone. When should non-white people dance?
I'm glad you brought that up, 05, because me and you, we know, you don't like dancing. We know how you feel about dancing.
Hate dancing most of the time.
I being somebody that enjoys dancing, I felt that it provided some constructive value. I just didn't know how, but I'm glad that the code Neely Fuller brought us with ways that dancing can be constructive. I want to go ahead and read them off. To exercise the body and mind for improved health, to tell a constructive story with a constructive lesson. That's an interesting one for me. Yeah, I don't know how to, I've never really thought of dancing. I know that, you often talk about dancing being an art and, being, a way of expression. But I've never thought of how by dancing, dancing can be a constructive story with a constructive lesson. And I thought that this was a third point, but I didn't see the bullet. But to help promote constructive communications between males and females prior to any act of sexual intercourse. Now that is a big one, because going to living the unconstructive life that I did for so many years, going to all the parties that I went to. You would dance with other women other women, depending on what you like, other men or women. And it was, for lack of a better word, it's just being horny, at least, at least that's how I thought of it. I did enjoy dancing, but I didn't really see any other reason why another girl should, rub her parts up against mine for any other purpose other than, letting them know that to promote constructive sexual communications. So I thought that was definitely interesting for me. May have shared too much.
And just to add to that, sorry, let me start not to laugh.
All right, while we compose ourselves,
That's a constructive, fun party.
yeah.
I wanted to go through, how they say dancing tells like a story. I probably said this before, but in my culture, we do jukadu dancing, and jukadu dancing is all the boys. Women could do it too, but mostly the boys dress up as the British men, and we wear beads, and we have our drummers in the front, and the drummers, basically the jukadu dancers have to go, the drums dance to the jukadu dancers' feet. So the feet of how they're moving is how the drum is supposed to move to the beat, because in our culture, we do believe that white people don't have rhythm. So a set of the jukadu dancer dancing to the drum goes to the rhythm of the jukadu dancer. So in tradition, we do that.
I just wanted, I didn't know, did you say British dancers or British men?
Well, they dress up like British white men, yeah. That's the ones that, we battled with.
Yeah, I would like to, I Googled what you were saying, and it says funny, and then I see white people. So I don't think any of those are constructive. So I would like to see what you were talking about though. So if you ever, find a video, and you can send it my way, because I would like to see what that looks like.
Okay.
Miss Ash, I still have that Miles Davis video on retainer, just in case slipped your mind.
No, it didn't slip my mind.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in the context of on page 122 again. He says what many white people see when they look at non-white people performing in sports and entertainment is not a person, but a strange, exotic, fascinating animal, possibly worthy of being sheltered, fed, groomed, decorated, petted, and proudly paraded at the end of a gilded leash. And I really like that part because it reminded me of I remember someone said something about how when they do like the football and basketball drafts, it literally looks like a slave auction. And I thought that that was really interesting. And then I watched the Smiles Davis clip, and I thought that it just reminded me of this paragraph. I don't know if you want to play it now. It's only a minute long clip, but it's really interesting.
Yeah, I started up. Meanwhile, anyone else have?
Yeah, I had that section highlighted as well because I don't really watch any sports, honestly. I really didn't have an interest in sports, so that's probably why it's easy for me not to watch sports, or I just don't watch sports. But I keep bringing up that point as well. It's like these people are like being paraded, and the response I get from others, they say things like I'm just gonna use an example. Like my family came over on Super Bowl day. I didn't even know it was Super Bowl day, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna watch the Super Bowl," and I'm just like, "No." Like technically, this TV is not supposed to be in here, anyways. But that's a different story. But no, the TV doesn't work, But it was just jokes. But anyways, I was bringing this up because I find that people really like love it so deep that I think it's something that people are really fighting to give up. It's like, oh, I cannot let my favorite team go, or I can't not watch soccer all day, or I cannot watch football all day, or I cannot watch basketball all day, And it's just like this idea, this one paragraph doesn't make you feel like bad, like some type of way to watch it, So it's very interesting because I find that, I guess, due to quote unquote programming, that it's hard to give up watching some sort of like sports on TV because they enjoy the slavery that happens for entertainment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when you think about something like football. Like, how do people, knowing that watching this sport, you're watching people hurt each other to the point that they get a brain disease, to the point where they could like kill
Yep.
their family or themselves because
Yep.
of brain disease. Like, how, I don't know how you could watch non-white people, like non-white people especially, could watch it. It makes sense why white people watch it though.
Yeah, and I think that's why this point, on top of what you read, Ash, is very important. Where the code says, as long as white supremacy exists, do not speak, act, do not think, speak, or act as if being praised for your abilities in sports and entertainment means that you are valued as a so-called human beings. Because human beings shouldn't be allowed to ram each other to the point where they're gonna get brain damage and like mentally potentially mentally retard themselves further than the system has already done it. And I'm gonna play this clip that Ash suggested we watch real quick. Let me share screen.
I'd like to comment on sports after though.
All right, can you all see this?
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
Are black musicians genetically better than white musicians? Get me in trouble.
Not better, but they play different. White musicians seem to lag behind the beat. I don't know why.
Does black musicians hurt more?
What do you mean hurt more?
I mean, is it?
It's not that cliche.
I mean, it's not that easy to say that because you came out of slavery, you play on the beat.
No. I have nothing to do with it.
All right.
I told a student teacher of mine like that in Juilliard. She started talking about, the black people were despondent at night, and they say that's where the blues came from. So I raised my hand. I said, listen, my father's rich, my mom is good looking, right? And I can play the blues. I never suffered and don't intend to suffer.
Look at.
I thought that clip was interesting because it reminded me of that line that he said. Like, even someone like Miles Davis, who is like this super accomplished jazz musician, they can still can only think of him as like, this suffering beast, and look at him as you're only able to make music the way you are because you've been enslaved.
Yeah, I wanted to comment. You're like, I see Miss Williams. Did you want to make a comment?
Okay, what I wanted to say was I agree with what you were saying about how we should not support sports, because on page 129 at the top, it says, do not speak or act to support any sport or entertainment wherein people are creatures are required or expected to be willfully or deliberately physically, mental, or non-constructive harm to each other. When I used to try to get into sports, right? Not so because I really was into it, but sometimes you're dating guys and they like sports, so you try to get into it or whatever. And after I saw the movie Concussion with Will Smith, that's when I knew I would no longer watch football. So from that point, the football left, and I just didn't see the purpose of sports anymore. But I just can't understand how men can think that's fun, to see somebody hurt or somebody took off the field and put on a stretcher and they cheering, but I guess that's entertainment.
And then also too, that was a great point you mentioned, is like one of the things to talk about as for sports in that area is like how they talk about sports too. Like they talk about it like slave, like, oh, did you see who was drafted? Oh, look at who was traded for so and so because of X, Y, and Z. Like, oh, this will be beneficial for this team, because they're the fastest or the biggest or this. It's just like the way they talk about the sports is very interesting too. And it almost reminds me of like, this is straight white supremacy. This is literally how they were talking about Black people. Literally just like this. Like, oh, let's see who we can trade off from this plantation to the next plantation. This person's a little bit older or younger, Yeah, sorry, let me stop going in on sports because
That remind me of Damian Green from what's that basketball team? The Warriors, where he had a press conference and he was basically saying that players risk their body and put so much work, playing, that they don't have a right to try to trade their self. It's kind of up to the company or the team to trade themselves, and they don't have that right to trade themselves, which he felt like wasn't fair. But I guess you have to understand in the reality that, of course, you don't have the right to trade yourself. You are a asset to them. You work for them as much as you're a valuable player, quote unquote. They can replace you any kind of way and throw you away, and basically you're not nothing to them. So I guess he was understanding the gist of that they don't have rights and it's not fair, but I think players is starting to understand that no, you don't have rights. You either play for this team or you're just not going to have any money at all.
Yeah, I noticed something similar to that as well. So for me, I play soccer. I played soccer. I watched a lot of soccer for a very long time. I started playing maybe when I was 8, and I still play to this day. My relationship with sports has always been somewhat kind of different. I never really enjoyed the sports such as like football or the ones where it requires repeated hitting of your opponent or your another human being, I should say. I've never really found those enjoyable to watch. I usually stuck to mostly soccer and sports like basketball, but like Carice was saying about how they kind of own their lives. I started to notice that because I used to want to be a professional soccer player, but then you kind of go into like the behind the scenes, and I started to realize like these people have absolutely no control over their lives. They are on a rigorous schedule. Anything that they do, like for instance, if they go out if they leave their hotel for whatever reason, they get fined of X amount of money. They are on an intense diet. They're on an intense exercise regimen, which leaves them absolutely no time for anything else of constructive value. So I noticed pretty early on that that's not something that I wanted to do. I still, for me, it's until Miss Williams read that last part about do not speak and or act in support of any sport or entertainment where people or creatures are required or expected to do willful and deliberate physical, mental, and or non-constructive harm to each other. I was still kind of on the fence before that, because, you know, the earlier point in there was about, you know, repeated harm, doing repeated harm to your opponent. I mean, soccer, it requires some tackling, but, you know, for the most part, it's considered like a non-contact sport. So I thought, well, they're not necessarily, the goal isn't to injure their opponent in order for them to win. They can play the game without anybody getting hurt. You know, so, but in that last part, like Miss Williams read, I feel that there's a mental harm because you see your opponent, it kind of promotes that competitiveness of, you know, seeing the other human being as an enemy. And that's kind of, you know, something that shouldn't be promoted. And that's racism, white supremacy, to see people as your enemies or you know, characteristics of European behavior, thought and behavior. So, I mean, I still, you know, watch a little bit of it. I'm still working on it, still learning. And FYI, Nana y'all was subbing me the whole time. So. Yeah, so that's where I'm at with that.
I feel like there's also like a homoeroticism in sports, like the way that the white people talk about these black men's bodies is very sexualized. Like if you go by like the ISIS papers and what Dr. Wilson talks about, that's not the reason maybe you shouldn't watch sports, because it is really like objectifying and sexualizing.
Yeah, you don't think I could watch it and not experience the same feelings white people like experience towards it?
I'm not saying you have homoerotic feelings. I'm just saying, like, just like you wouldn't want to watch something that's like exploiting, let's say, like a woman, way that's like demeaning, like this is also like exploiting these men in a homoerotic, demeaning way, sexualizing their bodies and stuff.
What if I just watch soccer completely silent? You know, it's just on the TV. I got some constructive sounds going. It's just, you know, not. Would that make it constructive? Somebody help me out. Yeah, I'm just exploring all avenues. You know, I need to come to it's absolutely unconstructive.
Well, like it's. I'm always gonna say this because like soccer gives you physical exertion. You know, it's like it could be considered a so-called workout. So I would say it's constructive just for that. Just understand that whenever you're kicking a white ball into a white net, that's white supremacy subconsciously or consciously telling you that, you know, help participate in white genetic survival.
That's just I have to tag in on, or not tag in, but I had to comment. Is I agree with what 05 is saying. Like playing it is totally different than supporting it. And by watching it, that's supporting it, because initially, if you're watching a sport, that's giving them views, which essentially gives the program money, and that's initially what they want for support. So I think that's another thing to like think about as you're watching it, whether you're just watching the highlights or you're just watching a whole show of it, or you're watching it on silent, because you're watching it on silent, whether there's sound or not, you're still supporting it. So I think it's just something to think about, any sport that is. And of course, if you're playing it, you can go ahead and go back and say it's exercise, if you will.
I really so when I read this part, a lot of this portion, I wrote down romantic monster, because it reminded me of like when I was more confused and my relationships with other victims of racism. They were always like pitiful, silly, stupid, selfish, deceptive, confusing, or disappointing. every relationship consisted of a combination of those things. And this is because I was very much romantic, or like behaving like a Roman, which is like using charm and manipulation to get what I want from people, and that is definitely a form of mistreatment, but it was part of my training. And that particular aspect of my training, I was quite skilled at, unfortunately. But it's really refreshing to just understand one's behavior, and just to be truthful with it. Just wow, I used to be a real romantic monster. I used to really um just do a lot of incorrect things in so-called romantic relationships. Oh, it's just all part of the programming now that I understand. And I think this I really should read this entire portion. But a really good takeaway is this part for 128. The code says, within a system of white supremacy, so-called romance is a way of thinking, speaking, and acting that is sometimes promoted by the white supremacists in such a manner as to cause non-white people to think, speak, and act in a manner that is pitiful, silly, stupid, selfish, deceptive, confusing, and/or disappointing. Romance can be dominated by greed, jealousy, passion, and/or enjoyment, without in any way being associated with the production of love. It is best and correct to think of love and justice as being one and the same. So logic should tell us that since justice isn't on the planet, perhaps love isn't on the planet as well, according to the counter racist logic.
Yeah, on the topic of romance, I've always felt that I never really understood what romance is or being romantic. I've always felt that it was kind of like, for lack of a better word, corny, just kind of unnatural to be romantic. And so this provided a lot of clarity and insight on what romance actually is, and how I liked how he said, the last part, how romance can not even be associated with the production of love. So you can be romantic with somebody and not even love them or, attempt to love them.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So
I learned,
oh, go for it.
I learned I learned something. I'm so used to using the word love, and I think that in our society we have used the word so much that when you look at the code and you realize that wasn't love, what was that, right? But then I realize now that I'm having to stop myself from saying the word love. So either I'll use the word care or I'll use the word justice, because justice is love, right? And if we don't have justice, and we don't, because of the system of racism, white supremacy, then love is non-existent until justice is produced. So I'm taking that word out of my vocabulary, and I'm going to just use justice or use care. That's all I got.
Well said, Miss Williams. I also have been attempting to say that word a lot less, and try to replace it with like appreciation or other words of affirmation. But yeah, I always thought the word was very suspicious. Growing up, you hear, "I love you," I love this, I love that," and then we're always surrounded by things that would indicate that there's no love, quite the opposite, a lot of hostility and destruction. But love, people so-called caring about each other to the point where they love each other, it's highly just a fantasy we've all been forced to participate in, I would say.
Oh, one thing I'd like to add, love and romance are in the word guide. Use those terms with caution.
Yeah. um Anyone else have any things they want to share from what we read?
What is the definition of love in the revised edition? or is it in the word guide? Does anybody have that definition?
I don't think there's a definition in the book of love.
Dan, is it in the word guide? Do you have it nearby to read it out?
Give me just a sec. Love is page 211 in the word guide. Love, use this word with caution. Do not use this word to describe any condition that now exists between the people of the known universe. Instead, use terms like affection, affectionate, caring, concern, considerate, cooperative, helpful, supportive, etc. to apply to speech and action between persons, creatures, and or things that produce a constructive result. Do not use the word love to apply to such speech or action. When others use the word love, ask for a detailed explanation that you can easily understand. When people say that they love someone or that someone loves them, it is correct to ask those people to explain exactly and in detail what they mean. Ask questions. And then there's the questions are continued on page 212.
Well, thank you for reading that.
In the
I
code
was
book,
wondering if it was different than it was in the 84 edition. And it's very different. There's actually a definition in the 84 edition of the code book.
The final thing I appreciated from this portion is on 129. And it says when producing realistic portrayals of the activities of non-white people, try to also include realistic portrayals of the interactions between non-white people and white people, as well as interactions between white people with each other. Explanation: during the existence of white supremacy, and according to compensatory counterracist logic, any form of storytelling about white people must include a substantial number of white people if the so-called storytelling is both realistic and of constructive value, and teaching about the need for justice, balance between people, and correctness, balance between creatures, things, etc. I really like this part because we have a artist in the book club, Ash, and all of her art is reflective of what's happening on planet Earth involving the problem. And you probably won't know that by looking at it at first glance, but it's there and it's being implanted in people's brain computers slowly but surely. And I think it's part of the true propaganda that non-white people need to be producing in the entertainment area. Just we need to be putting out art, books, movies, all forms of entertainment that are gonna implant in a brain computer the need to produce justice. To producing justice is the topic of discussion. No more talking about celebrities or whatever people are talking about these days, which is not producing justice. Any more comments or to what I just said, or can we get into closing comments? Okay, let's start closing comments. Would anyone like to start?
I can go first. Thanks 0526 for shouting out me. All right. I really like this chapter. I kind of I like it because I feel like we're in this age of like people are constantly being entertained. Like people spend at least 90% of their day being entertained, and I think people are addicted to entertainment. So I really like that kind of like set standards on what is constructive entertainment and how to constructively use your time. And I think that is something for me that I'm gonna implement with myself and my offspring too, because I think that I fall prey to like always wanting to watch something or always wanting to have something on or always wanting to listen to something. And just because what you're listening to is like you're learning from it, like you're also like getting some sort of entertainment from it. And sometimes that's like clouding sometimes your mind too often. So yeah, not to ramble, but I just really appreciated this whole chapter.
I really liked this chapter. It gave me a breakdown of the details of entertainment. I took it into a lot of consideration of things that I want to do differently and that I'm going to do differently. So just to hear from everyone's perspective and to just keep learning is the goal of the step closer to producing justice. So I'm feeling kind of hopeful and I'm just ready to learn more.
For me, this was a really stellar portion and discussion. Thank you, Ms. Williams, for joining us today. Hope to see you in the future and more discussions about the problem and producing justice. The biggest takeaway is that the show offisms, the dancing, the gatherings, all must go for this problem to go. And I'm so happy that that I wasn't crazy my entire life by not wanting to dance at these parties, by not wanting to dance for my victim unit, or trying to force me to dance in front of other victim units. I'm just like, oh, I've always have sort of been aware that we shouldn't be dancing. We should be focusing our attention on solving this problem that all you older grown-ups are avoiding with your 40s and your gambling and whatnot, all the stuff I saw them doing, but not for entertainment besides trying to solve the problem. Or at least telling your younger people that there's a problem going on and we're not gonna solve it, but maybe y'all can solve it if y'all know about it. So bare minimum, at least speak about this problem to the little ones so they may be aware. And
I can go next. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Edward.
I'd just like to thank everyone for a constructive conversation.
For me, this area 3 was very enlightening and very insightful. Once again, more tools to be more codified and produce justice and constructive results. Thank you for this piece of knowledge. I look forward to continuing the discussion on the code book.
Quick observation. I've heard the word enlightened twice in this discussion. I've replaced that word with endarkened or learned something, because enlightening is placing knowledge and.
You're right. My mistake.
That's okay. I'll just make it
very insightful.
So, any more closing comments?
Yeah, just to close off, this was one of my, I say it every week, my favorite sections, but I guess I don't have a favorite at this point. It's just I love the book so far. I have to just say, like, once again, like, entertainment really just answered a lot of things for me. And I think I'm just gonna have to continue on and just to finish the book because I'm too eager. And I just feel like a lot of my questions could be answered if I just kept reading, So I just feel the need to just like try to finish this within a couple of days. I'm just playing, but very soon, so I can have a lot of my answers that I'm searching for, I guess.
Yeah, one of the greatest thrills I've had all of last year was reading some of this book, because there's just so much knowledge, so much to learn from it.
And I would add for my closing remarks, enlighten, that's in the Word Guide, page 106. And then love, the definition in the 1984 edition is page 277. And for myself, my closing remarks are, don't pay for entertainment. If you got to watch it, find it online for free or go to the library or something. If you do have to watch entertainment, try and look for life lessons in it to help solve this problem, inspire new ideas, and reading is more important than watching TV.
Ms. Williams, would you like to share?
Yeah, yes, I will. On page 125, my closing remarks, at the very bottom of the page in italics, it says, do not expect to be happy at all the time or most of the time. Instead, expect happiness to come to you in moments that pass so swiftly that you will almost miss its full flavor at its peak. Now, I said that because happiness to me is those moments when I can find a laughter. Now, I'm gonna have to take BGQ on the laughter part for those who is nothing. I mean, racism, white supremacy, and what has done us, there's nothing to laugh about that. But as a victim, if you don't have outlets or ways to release the anger, the fear, the anxiety, or whatever you're experiencing in the system, to me, the laughter helps break that monogamy. So if I can laugh about something temporarily, then I have enough strength to continue to work to produce justice. But if I had no laughter there, I think I would probably just go crazy or something, because I would not have anything to look forward to. So that's why those moments of happiness or the spurts of time, those are very important. So I just wanted to bring that out. Thank you. And I appreciate everybody on the panel, and thank you so much for inviting me.
No worries. Thanks for sharing. That part was really important. Thanks for reading it. I'm glad we have it in the archive now. Thank you everyone for participating and sharing. Going to